Hey everybody, this is Natalie Bratton with the Bratton Real Estate Group at RE/MAX First in Oklahoma City. And today I have a special treat for you. Instead of hearing my thoughts and advice about weather in Oklahoma, I have for you today a real live meteorologist. And not just any meteorologist, but this is my friend and client, Larry. And he has agreed to help shed some light on the weather in Oklahoma City. So everyone say hi to Larry.
Hi.
And Larry, just give some background to these people. Tell them who you are, where you're from, why you're here today.
Well, I initially grew up in Oklahoma. I went to University of Oklahoma for undergrad. Then about 17, 18 years ago, I left to go down to Texas A&M to be an Aggie to learn more about the weather, where I got my PhD and a master's in atmospheric sciences. And then after that, I went to Louisiana to be a faculty member at the University of Louisiana at Monroe in Northeast Louisiana. Okay. And then after that, I moved to Austin, San Antonio region to work for the National Weather Service, followed by another stint of that in Phoenix before coming back to work for the National Severe Storms Lab in Norman. About a year and a half ago to be closer to family.
Okay, so Larry knows his stuff. So we're going to ask him all the questions that you asked me about weather. So why is weather so unpredictable here in Oklahoma? Why it's like that here, but it's not in other parts of the country?
Yeah, well, anywhere east of the Rocky Mountains can get some pretty extreme changes in temperature, but here we're kind of right in the center of it all. We're relatively close to the Gulf of Mexico. It's only about 400, 500 miles, but then also we get intense cold.
So it's just coming from all directions.
Yeah, and we got the Rockies off to the west, which makes some of our weather systems even more energetic and strong than they are probably in other parts of the country. Of course, we don't necessarily get hurricanes here, at least not hurricanes. We can occasionally get remnants of tropical storms. We've got blizzards here before, and I lived away, came back for Christmas. We had about 12 to 16 inches of snow that one year. 2009, yeah, on Christmas Eve. So we can get that, but then, last year for Christmas it was 80 degrees, actually 2021. Yeah. So, it's very, very erratic, but also makes things fun. If you like to have all the different seasons in the same week, it works for you.
Well, yeah, we joke that if you don't like the weather, just wait 2 days and it'll change.
Yep.
Okay, so everybody emails me and they say they want to live here, but they're scared of tornadoes. And so, do we really get that many tornadoes? How strong are they? Just what are your thoughts on tornadoes in Oklahoma?
We do get a lot of tornadoes relative to other parts of the country. The spring season, typically mid-March to mid-June, is the time of year we get the most tornadoes, and that's when we have the greatest threats. And that's typically when we see our strongest tornadoes, but we can get tornadoes at any time of the year, although you're seeing that in other parts of the country as well. It's one of those things that there's very high awareness of severe weather here, and so the National Weather Service and broadcast meteorologists and all your emergency managers across the state and in Oklahoma City in particular, they really know their stuff. And so on a day when there is severe weather, you're going to hear about it. It's going to be all over billboards. People will be talking about it. Even on the sports radio, you're going to hear about it. So
right. And that's what I've told you all, that on the weather channels and stuff, they will tell you down to the minute when the storm is going to be in your area. And we know, that week to watch because the threat of severe weather. So they've seen Twister. Mm-hmm. And that's what they imagine. And they've seen the videos of the 2013 tornado and the three big ones we've had.
2003, 99.
Yeah. So can you speak anything to that? What is that? How is that in comparison to what we normally experience?
So I would say, historically in our region, we probably see one or two every decade. Days that are like that, where they actually hit Oklahoma City. We probably have the threat one or two times a year where that's a possibility, and it usually happens somewhere, just not always right in Oklahoma City. But the biggest thing I think you can do is just be prepared and be aware. They don't typically, for the really big, strong tornadoes that we get, those are typically on days that we're expecting something like that could happen. And so as long as you have a plan of action, you don't try to outrun the storms, but you make sure that you either have a safe room, whether it's below ground or above ground, or you have a house that has interior room that doesn't have windows, that's separated by a few to several walls. Mm-hmm. As long as you are looking for a house that has some sort of good location to kind of make sure you're safe from a tornado, then for the most part, very, very few storms actually have tornadoes that cause people to lose their lives in their home. It does happen, but as long as you're prepared and you have the right kind of setup and you take the right precautions, normally everything is going to be okay.
Right. We don't expect the worst, but we prepare for it.
Exactly.
Just in case. Usually it's just maybe you get some fence damage or your trampoline flies over into the neighbor's yard, but we want to be prepared for the big ones if they happen.
And if you feel like you don't have, a safe location at your house, on days that are the big days, just make sure that, a few hours before it's expected to hit, that you go find your safe location. You definitely don't want to be out there whenever it's actually within an hour and about to happen. Like, that's just a really bad idea.
So, Moore gets a bad rap because some of our biggest tornadoes went through Moore. And so people will call me and say,
we like Moore, but we're scared to live there.
Is there really something to Moore, and is Moore really a target for tornadoes?
Well, I mean, I guess if you look at the last 20, 25 years, they have certainly been hit a lot more than other locations. But if you look at a map of Oklahoma City or Oklahoma County and the surrounding region over the past, 100 years plus, you'll see a fairly equal probability of tornadoes across the entire area. And so what's happened the last 20, 25 years didn't necessarily happen prior to that. So that's probably something that's just, a statistical outlier. The very first tornado warning that occurred actually was issued at Tinker Air Force Base in the 1950s. And then 5 days later, almost the same exact path happened. So that can happen. And then those locations probably didn't really get hit for many more decades. And so, it really depends on, a lot of different factors. And, pretty much the north side of Oklahoma City, the west side of Oklahoma City, east side, south side, they all pretty much have a climatologically similar chance of having tornadoes in a given year.
You mentioned winter. What do we need to know about winter in Oklahoma?
Well, winter is even more unpredictable than the spring, I feel like, because you can have some wild temperature swings. Winter precipitation, from my experience in the Weather Service, is probably the most difficult to predict, especially in the plains, because what type of precipitation, it really depends on the temperature, the ground temperature, and then the structure of the atmosphere. So, there could be events that look like you're going to get snow, but then they turn out to be sleet. Events that looks like can be sleet could be snow, freezing rain.
Well, and just like 2 weeks ago, we all thought we were going to have like a ton of freezing rain, and then it was kind of a letdown. Like, what's
and
that
then the
about?
next day we have freezing drizzle or freezing fog, right? So it just, in the wintertime, you just got to be on your toes for things like that, because it is really, really difficult to predict because you have so many factors that are involved.
Well, and again, if we get freezing rain and ice 3 days later, the weather will change and it will all melt and go away.
Usually, except for that blizzard in 2009. It was around for 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, we played a lot of video games at home that month. Okay, it's windy here. Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plains. Are there places that are windier than here? Like, is Chicago really the windy city, or are we the windy city?
I think consistently throughout the entire year, we're probably windier. I would have to look at, I'd have to do some studies to figure that out for sure. But we do get some pretty windy days here. And that also brings allergens from the north and from the south. And so, if you've had allergies anywhere you've lived, you'll probably have allergies here. And if you haven't had allergies other places,
you'll probably have allergies here.
And again, if you like all 4 seasons, you can sometimes get them in the week. All one time. In the summertime, we typically just have summer.
Yeah.
But we do get a little bit of a break. It's not always so hot and humid and oppressive like it might be in areas further east and south, or even out in Arizona where they do have monsoons. They get a little bit humid, not nearly as humid as here, but their heat is really oppressive. So
well, and here we have central air conditioning.
Yeah.
Where some states they don't really do that.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely are going to have air conditioning in your heater here for sure, because we get pretty wild swings. But, the good news is usually even in the summer we get some days where it cools off a little bit. At night it can be cool.
Yeah.
During the day maybe have a high in the 80s, some days, and that gives you a break from the 90s, and sometimes we get 100s here.
Yeah.
But, you can also get 80 or 90 in February and October, right? So there's advantages to that.
We call that first spring. And then there's second spring, and then there's third spring.
Yeah, and like eighth winter.
Yeah.
In April.
Yeah.
For a day.
Yeah.
And then it's back to 90.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Come back next week. I'm going to talk about Oklahoma City real estate and investment properties for 2023.